You are not broken. You are simply being very badly served by accountants and a financial world that does not recognize the creative people and the work we do as being as valuable as it is, because it tends to be underpaid. And you may feel reduced to only your numbers when you are sitting in front of a numbers person. You may feel judgment and shame because they're only looking at that one element of your life, and it's probably an element that you deprioritize. Welcome to the Sunlight Podcast. In this show, we're talking about taxes, money, and careers for creative people who have a big vision for changing the world with their work. I'm your host, Hannah Cole, artist, tax pro, and the founder of Sunlight Tax. If you're an artist, designer, or creative entrepreneur who wants to grow your business sustainably, manage your taxes, and build a stash of fuck you money so you can control your own time and have a bigger impact with your work, you are in the right place. Hello, welcome everybody. Today, I want to talk about what accountants get wrong about creative people. Now, you probably have experienced this. Here's the scenario. You are, let's say, any kind of creative person who is a professional, right? Let's say you're an illustrator. You have gotten all these career awards and accomplishments, and you're doing incredibly well. You know, maybe you've won a Caldecott Award. You have your book published in 7 different languages. Or if you're an artist, maybe you are, represented by increasingly better galleries, and, you're just signing on to your first international gallery. You're showing all kinds of places. You have all these accomplishments, right? And then you walk in to get your taxes done. You sit down with an accountant, and suddenly they're acting like you're some kind of hobbyist, right? They're acting like you are a dilettante and not a professional. And you suddenly, instead of feeling like valued and seen for the incredible professional work that you are doing, suddenly you just feel 2 feet tall and filled with anxiety and fear and shame. And you're looking at your stuff and you're like, well, I guess I'm not making a ton of money, and you see yourself suddenly through the accountant's eyes, and you don't feel so good anymore, right? Well, if you're in that scenario, it is impossible to be served well by that accountant. It is just impossible, because they are not seeing you, right? They are not seeing that you're a professional. And a lot of times they just miss a whole huge portion of what you do and the value you bring to the world as a creative person. So I want to get into what's going on there, why you are not broken, and what you can do about it. Okay. So just to start off, accountants and creative people are basically as diametrically opposed as 2 groups of people could be, right? We are talking about a huge cultural difference, right? If you go into accounting, you are very likely to be a pretty risk-averse, conservative person, right? Accounting is a steady job. There's a lot of room in the world for bad accountants, because if you have a degree in accounting training, you can be employed, right? It's very, very safe. It also means, though, there's room for you to be really not that good at what you do and still be gainfully employed. This is not the case in the arts. Oh my God, when you're an artist, you have to be excellent at what you do. And so right up front, there's like a couple of really big differences. Also, accountants are really risk averse, right? And you as an artist are the opposite, right? You are doing a career that is extremely risky, right? Accountants are counting on a steady paycheck. They went into this field maybe because they love accounting, possibly, but I bet you don't talk to a lot of people who say that they are in love with accounting, right? And accountants also tend to be more conformist minded, right? They want a job like everybody else. They have a fear of standing out, right? This is why every accountant's website looks the same. And why, if you're a graphic designer, oh my goodness, accountants might be a really good target audience for you, I will just say, because getting some good branding on an accounting firm is like gonna rocket them forward because accountants have such a hard time differentiating themselves from each other because they don't really want to be different. They don't really want to stand out. That can be hard to even relate to when you're a creative person because we're the weirdos. We're used to kind of being on the outside, right? And so standing out is more the norm for us. So just think about all those layers of cultural difference that are already going on before you ever set foot in an accountant's office. But then I want to talk about another thing that happens in the creative world. Now, this is true whether you are running a sizable creative business that is generating a lot of income, or if you are doing something really risky, really kind of cutting edge that is maybe getting a lot of critical acclaim, but not raking in money. You probably experience this either way. But look what happens with your money. So I already alluded to the fact that accountants, there's room in the world for bad accountants. There isn't room in the world for bad artists. I mean, bad hobbyist artists, maybe, but if you were a professional, if you were actually doing this for a living, there is not room for you to be bad at what you do. You really have to have a degree of excellence to commit to a creative career because it's just difficult. It is a little underpaid and it's really hard going. So when you're a creative person, especially one in a fine arts field or a field that is like really competitive, I just don't know anybody in a creative field who doesn't prioritize making excellent work, making their work be the most outrageously good it possibly can be. You are interested in connecting with people, with blowing people's minds with an incredible project, play, song, piece of visual art, whatever it is, right? Brand. So a lot of times, if you are operating in that way where your top priority is the excellence of your work, that is going to have an impact on your finances. I'm not here to judge that. I think it's amazing what we are doing as creative people. And I say this as a person. I mean, half of the reason that I'm able to speak to this issue is because I am a professional artist, went to art school, got my MFA. I'm represented by 2 different galleries. I have shows in museums, but I also went back to school for accounting. So I have been, and I trained in 2 different accounting firms, right? So I have been surrounded by these 2 very different groups of people. So I should have said this at the beginning, but anyway, if you're an artist operating on a shoestring, trying to pull off some big grand project that may be financially risky, you're probably kind of making decisions where, for one thing, you're probably going to buy materials that are excellent, right? You want that work to be as good as it can be. So you're probably not scrimping on the costs of production. So that is a thing that will affect your numbers. Okay. I mean, that's just a fact. You also may be in that sort of operating on a shoestring kind of thing. You may be doing things like having a bunch of people do work for you and paying them just with like bringing pizza as everybody comes and gathers and assembles the thing or practices and rehearsal, right? And so money is not changing hands the way that it might be in another field where there's more of an expectation that you would be able to pay everybody a certain rate, et cetera, right? There's less sort of bartering going on in other fields than there can be in the creative world. But because we operate in that way, now you do that so that you can put on some amazing thing, right? We're kind of alchemists as creative people. You produce these incredible experiences out of very little. And I think that's an amazing skill, one that the rest of the world could really use more of. But when you operate that way, of course, your balance sheet, your profit and loss statement, they're going to show it, right? And that's not a judgment. I know we can feel really judged by our numbers, but in fact, numbers are they're just facts, right? They're just a record. And it's one kind of way to see what's been happening in your business. The problem is when you bring that profit and loss statement to an accountant who doesn't see the brilliance of the play you produced, the art exhibit that you put up, et cetera, when all they're looking at is the numbers, suddenly all that kind of magic and sweat that went into your work, all those decisions where you spent more money and you didn't bring in as much, those are all looking at you in the face on a piece of paper. And you see this accountant who really doesn't get the art part, looking back at you and only reflecting that piece that you have deprioritized, right? Which is the money. Now, suddenly you start seeing yourself through that accountant's eyes and you're like, oh my God, wait a minute. Am I, you start doubting yourself. You start doubting your place in the world, your value in the world, because you see that that is what that accountant is doing when they look at your numbers. How many of us have sat in that room with an accountant looking at our numbers like that in a world like that and suddenly felt filled with shame, filled with embarrassment, totally intimidated, totally judged, totally not seen for the brilliance that you actually put into the world, for the professionalism that you operate in the world with. It's really common. In fact, I have experienced this in such a deep, painful way that I went back to school for accounting and founded my company because of it, because I found that experience to be so humiliating and so wrong, because I think artists really need financial education, tax education, and you cannot be well served when you walk into a place and instantly feel shame and judgment and alienation. There's no way you can walk into a room like that and be very open about your fears and your questions, especially when you're already feeling like this person is judging you and you're feeling like you don't maybe even know the basics of a financial education. You just didn't get a financial education, okay? It just feels so terrible. So I just want to say that this is a real thing that happens to people, and it can cause creative people to be very underserved, very badly served when it comes to getting good information about our taxes, our financial, a basic financial education, and getting clarity about places where we feel confusion, right? Because you do need to pay your taxes. You do need to have a basic personal finance plan. You do need to have savings, and you do need to put money, set up retirement accounts where you can fund your financial future. You need those things, no matter who you are. But if you're sitting in a room where you absolutely can't even formulate the question because so much shame and judgment is coming up for you, you're just never going to get it. Okay. So the good news is this is the whole reason I formed my company, and I have lots for you, but let's just get a little bit more into this. So I want to tell you a little story about a woman who's in my program. I run a program called Money Bootcamp where I teach taxes, personal finance, legal setup, and how to set up retirement accounts and invest the money inside them, because those are the basic things that you need, that everybody needs, but creative people most especially need to be taught in a judgment-free way from someone who understands that we don't teach taxes in high school, so no one has a tax education, and that most creative people did not get much business background and don't have a lot of the basics that would be helpful to them when it comes to things like break-even analysis or how to produce financial statements, how to set up bookkeeping, kind of the role of those elements that are there to help anyone running any business, right? So artists are particularly underserved in this area, which is why I created Sunlight Tax. So I was just interviewing a woman in my program, Money Bootcamp, named Gretchen Carder, who owns the Good Quilt store. She's a really incredible woman who is, she's a professional quilt maker, and her quilts are they're very modern and colorful and very, very cool. And she does them custom. So definitely check that out. I will leave a link in the show notes to the Good Quilt store so you can check out Gretchen's work. But I was interviewing her recently for the podcast, and she sent me a follow-up email afterwards with this story that she had forgotten to tell in our interview because she really wanted to make sure I heard this story. And she did give me permission to share it with you here. So I'm just going to read Gretchen's story to you because I think it really illustrates what I'm talking about. So here's Gretchen's words. I did go looking for small business help through my local Chamber of Commerce. They have a mentorship program, and I was assigned a mentor to meet with for 6 months. However, I can remember the embarrassment I felt in our first meeting when I tried to explain that, yes, I am a quilter, and yes, I think I can make a living doing this. It is possible that I imagined his confusion, but it was clear that he had no idea how to advise an artist. He was used to working with tech startups and other kinds of businesses that most definitely did not include art businesses. Our meetings consisted of me squirming in my seat and being too scared to ask questions like, what is an LLC exactly? But how do I know how much tax I owe? We only met for 2 months before I called it quits. I was just too ashamed of how little I felt when talking to him. Oh, Gretchen, I feel you. I think that all of us know what that feels like. She also added this little addendum, which is so sweet of her to say, but she's in my program, Money Bootcamp. I should explain. She says, that's why Money Bootcamp is so great. From video number 1, I felt so seen by you. So that's awesome. I mean, I think that's also important to know that I did make a program that is meant to solve this problem. Who doesn't know what that feels like, right? I think if you're a creative person, you have had some encounter in your life like the one that Gretchen describes here, where you don't even know how to formulate your question. There's just no way to get any value out of that situation. And if you're paying for it, if it's a financial advisor or a tax professional, you're still going to pay full price and you're not going to get any of your questions answered. And you're going to feel absolutely horrible. It just sucks. So there is an alternative. You can learn from somebody who gets you. And I'm not here to say that everyone needs an accountant. I actually don't think you do. A lot of this stuff is really about getting a basic understanding of just how taxes work, how self-employment tax works, how to set up your basic systems like receipt collection, tax document collection, bookkeeping, retirement accounts. And it's fully okay to do those things on your own. And we creative people, we're pretty DIY, aren't we? Right? So you really can do most of this stuff on your own, but you need a baseline of understanding in personal finance, understanding your taxes, simple systems to streamline your taxes, setting up your bookkeeping, paying your quarterly taxes, learning how to set up your business legally, setting up retirement accounts so that you can build financial security so that you can rest. And you actually also need to learn the basics of investing because those retirement accounts do nothing for you if the money in them is not invested. So that is actually part of the equation. But when you have this education, you have the power to save money because you know how to do things on your own, right? You don't have to actually go to a financial advisor if you spend 3 hours learning how to invest and doing some research about the cost of the investments that you're putting money into. I honestly think that most of you can do everything you need to with investing with 3 hours of education. But I also want to point out to you the places where you really do need an expert, right? There are times you do need to consult with somebody, and it's good to know the difference. Is this something that is just a confusion about how the basics work, and I can look this up on my own? I can come to understand this easily myself, or do I need to pay an expert to get me through this area? Right? You need a certain baseline of knowledge to even know the difference between those two things. And without it, you're just subject to paying an accountant anytime you have any question at all, right? And not necessarily knowing that you'll be well served. I think it's really important to know exactly what you need so you don't pay for a bunch of stuff that you don't actually need. And that also that at a certain time of year, at tax time, you don't, when you're feeling super, super confused, that you have a way to sort out that confusion. So most of us as creative people did not get a financial education or a business education. And none of us got a tax education because, although it is your mandatory civic duty, we do not teach taxes in high school, which I think we should. So you're not a weirdo for not knowing how your taxes work. Basically, nobody knows how taxes work, right? Unless you deliberately go out to study them. If you just have some simple tools, you really do have the power to control your own money, to save more money, to invest in yourself, to invest in your future, to actually have a fully funded retirement, or as I like to say, fuck you money. With that money, you can have the ability to rest, and you can have the ability to have a bigger impact on the world with that incredible work that you make. You have the power to have more money, and you don't have to feel awful or feel filled with shame. You can absolutely get this education while being reminded that the work you do is valuable in this world and that it's important that you keep doing it while you ensure that you have the financial resources you need to keep doing that creative work as long as you want to, and you have the money to have a bigger impact and to rest. So I want to end this by telling you a thing that I like to say a lot. You may have heard it from me before, but I don't think that creative people are told about their value or reminded of the value they bring to the world enough. And so I want to leave you with this thought. In this world where, people are more divided than ever, we are at each other's throats. We are not seeing each other as fully human. We are more divided than ever, and it feels scarier than ever, right? There is a lot at stake. And when I get depressed about that, the thing that gives me hope, no kidding, is you. Because creative people are the people changing the world. You are the person who is creating beauty. You are the empathy muscle of our culture. You are teaching other people how to have empathy, how to see perspectives they hadn't considered before. You are opening their eyes. You are showing them transcendent experiences, beauty, getting them in touch with their feelings, bridging divides between people. And you are also the visionaries showing the rest of the world what better world is possible, right? The world needs you. We need you. We need your creative work. And how are you going to have the power to keep doing that incredible creative work you are doing? You are going to have that power because you get paid for what you do and because you are managing the scary stuff that might derail you, like taxes or funding your retirement. And you are going to be able to keep going and have a bigger impact when you have financial security and systems in place to keep your taxes as easy as they can be and as low as they can be, and your retirement on track. Okay. So let me just summarize what we talked about today. You are not broken. You are simply being very badly served by accountants and a financial world that does not recognize the creative people and the work we do as being as valuable as it is, because it tends to be underpaid. And you may feel reduced to only your numbers when you are sitting in front of a numbers person, right? You may feel judgment and shame because they're only looking at that one element of your life. And it's probably an element that you deprioritize, right? They're not seeing the huge impact, the eye-opening experiences that you create in the world. A good tax education can help you feel more confident, in control, and empowered. And you can put simple systems in place to make your taxes and your money easier. You can save more money and grow your retirement fund, which I prefer to call your fuck you money. It is possible. You just need to learn the basics in a place where you feel safe and in a place where you feel seen. So if you are feeling like, okay, right, okay, I can do this. And yes, I do in fact deserve this. And I hope you do feel that way. And this sounds like work that you feel capable of doing. I'm here to tell you, you absolutely are. Then I want you to stay tuned. I am creating a special series on this podcast to start you on this path. I think I'm going to kind of call it Money School. So this special series is designed to get you feeling really empowered and knowing that this work is possible. So next week, we're going to have the first episode of Money School. I'm going to talk about receipts, tax documents, and bookkeeping. I'm going to clarify what the difference is between those things, because the confusion, it all feels like a jumbled muddle. And a lot of times you don't know why you're doing one thing versus the other. And that means you spend a lot of time doing work you don't actually need to do at all. And meanwhile, ignoring work that you definitely do need to be doing. So it's really important to know why you need certain things and what you don't need at all, so that you can get your systems set up and that they can be super simple. The point here is not to turn you into a professional bookkeeper. The point is to get that stuff handled as efficiently as possible so you can get back to the studio and keep doing that amazing work. All right. So I want you to listen to this series that's coming up starting next week. You can feel so much better, more in control, and have an easier time with your money and your taxes, and actually have fuck you money. So I want you to listen to this series. And then at the end of this series, I'm going to invite you to come to a free class that I'm offering. And this free class is going to teach you about some mistakes that every creative person makes. It's going to answer a bunch of questions that you are feeling too intimidated to ask an accountant. And it's going to leave you feeling really empowered and confident and like, hell yeah, about the work you are doing. And that's what I want, right? The point is not to shame you about money. The point is to say, you are doing the creative work that will change our world, and we want you to keep doing it. All right. So I hope you will listen to this podcast series that is coming up, Money School. I want you to get excited for this free class that I will be offering near the end of that you can sign up for. And I will see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review. It really helps, and share it with a friend. I'm so grateful. This podcast is for education and entertainment only. Nothing in this episode should be taken as individual tax or financial advice. You can find all the tools, books, and links we reference at sunlighttax.com/podcast.